Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new, welcome. I'm Jane, my husband Mike does everything behind the camera. We're British early retirees, we have no debt, we have paid off the mortgage, and we live a thrifty, frugal and money-saving life here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Sunday we bring to you an aspect of our private life, the things that we do all of the time in our thrifty, frugal and money-saving life. And this week, I kind of wanted to address a few things because every now and then we will get a comment, perfectly okay with all of these comments. And sometimes I think to myself, have I given people the wrong impression? Have I given people the impression that we're kind of wealthy in some way or another, or that we are not struggling in one way or another, or that we're not facing the same difficulties that most people out there are facing? And I thought, well, if I've given people the wrong impression, I need to obviously put that right. So this week is all about frugal myths and misunderstandings that people have had about us. And if you're looking for a video where I give you a hypothesis and then I prove it in a video, this is not the video for you. But if you want to know more about us as frugal people, our journey, our story, and how we've got here and how we are still surviving in this economic climate, then stay. And if you enjoy the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. So like we say in all our videos, we're thrifty, we're frugal, we're money saving, and you will see if you've watched any of our budgeting videos that we live on an income below minimum wage. And we often get comments, and I feel them, and I hear you when you say this, that it's all right for you, it's lucky for you, you wouldn't be able to do that now. And I absolutely acknowledge and accept that if we were starting off now and we were living off less than minimum wage, we would be destitute. We would be homeless, we would be destitute. We wouldn't be able to afford to live anywhere at all, nothing, nowhere. And we get that and we understand that. And also when people leave comments like that, they do need to remember that the fact is that we are who we are by accident of birth. You are. You're all where you are by accident of birth. I was born in 65, Mike was born in 66, we were both born in the UK. We were both born to families with a mother and a father. There were two incomes coming into the household. We were never cold, we were never hungry, all of those things. So those were the privileges that we grew up with. We grew up with the fact we had a home. And that is, that is a privilege in this modern world, even back then. We absolutely understand the luck, just the luck of the fact that we were born British, that we grew up with a free education system, and that we grew up with universal healthcare, and we grew up with a social safety net, that we grew up with free education, that we grew up with rights. Nobody ever said to me, it's forbidden for you to have an education because you're a woman. No one ever said to me, it's forbidden for you to do things because you live in this country. That there was no restrictions on who we could be or what we wanted to do. So that's the first one. We get it. However, when we get those kind of comments that, well, you couldn't do that now, we want people to understand the fact that we absolutely accept the fact that if we were starting off and we're on minimum wage now, that we would be destitute. We also wanted to share that just like everybody else in this economic climate, that we have to be frugal, that we have to budget every single penny, that we have to give every single penny a job to do. And explain that, there are plenty of people out there in various countries around the world, due to where they live and the circumstances there. They could have 200,000 a year coming in as a family and they're still struggling because of the rental costs, because of childcare costs, because of paying back their education, because they have to pay for their healthcare, because they have to pay really high insurances because the food is really expensive. So, it's easy to think that it's easier for someone else, that everybody else has got it easy. And you could be looking at me thinking like, oh, you've just got it so easy. And there's something else that I want to point out, so stay for the next point. Whenever we think that people are having it easy, and then all of a sudden we've got this massive economic crisis and people are suddenly struggling, they are not suddenly struggling. We've had peaks and troughs in the finances many times in our lifetimes, but obviously the worst one, coming from the UK, was the 2007 banking crisis and banking crash. The government bailed out the banks, whoopie-doo, bailed out the banks to stop a Great Recession type thing happening. And because of that, we saw massive austerity from government spending. And the government's the biggest employer in the UK from government spending. So it doesn't matter who you were, whether you were a doctor, anaesthetist, nurse, teacher, social worker, local government officer like my husband, or you clean the streets, or you clean the hospital, if you were a government employee for 10 years plus, you had a pay freeze. And then when the pay freezes were stopped, you were getting 1% pay rises. So what we effectively had, and so many people effectively had, because the cost of living went up a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, only small amounts, but the cost of living went up, rents went up, house prices got more expensive, food got a little bit more expensive, cars got more expensive, car fuel got more expensive, but your pay stayed the same. So year on year on year on year on year, most of us, and don't forget, when you have a mass employer like the government, then you have got pay freezes in the private sector as well. So we had this pay freeze from about 2007 onwards. And just about when things were starting to get a bit better, we all know what happened in the 2020s. We know what happened. So we've got to the stage where we've had years and years and years and years of pay freezes. The prices have risen. So in real terms, all of you, me, everybody had pay decreases year on year on year, like a 2% drop in living standards year on year on year on year. So we had to be frugal, you had to be frugal, we had to count every penny. When I take this one step further, and you think to yourself, but you were still lucky, and I want to take this a step further. And this is the elephant in the room bit. The elephant in the room being the bit that it's there, everybody can see it, but nobody really wants to mention it. So if you, like me and Mike, grew up in a time where nobody said to you, you can't have an education because you are of this type of person, or you can't have that education because you don't own a penis, so you can't have an education. Nobody told me what I could or couldn't do because of any of these reasons. And, if you've grown up around that sort of freedom and, the healthcare was covered by everybody's taxes, and education was covered by everybody's taxes, and everybody's got this kind of parity about them. But, and this is the elephant bit in the room, and I don't like to mention this because people look upon us as if we're kind of lucky in some kind of way, or that we had it in easy in some kind of way. There are plenty of people who had the chances that we had who didn't take them. There are plenty of people who did take the chances and spent every penny. There are plenty of people who took the chances and didn't save. So they're our age and they're still working. And there's also people who did make the most of things, but they were optimistic, and there's nothing wrong with that, to think that nothing would ever go wrong. Nothing would ever go wrong. Mike and I always thought about things that go wrong. Always thought what could go wrong. So we always had mortgage insurance. So if up until the day our mortgage was paid, if anything happened to Mike, I was all right. And if anything happened to me, Mike was all right. We always made sure that one of the two of us would always have a home, that things would always be paid off. We always made sure that, we once we paid down debt, that we never ever took out debt again, that we always did that. We were always aware of the fact that something could happen. So we saved and saved and saved. And I'm going to take this a little bit further. So Mike and I have not always had good jobs. When we got together, Mike was an assistant manager in a small hi-fi shop and was on a very basic wage. And, you know, like I've said to you, just by accident of birth and the fact that we lived in Plymouth, and when we bought a house in Plymouth, Plymouth was really run down. And when I say we bought a house in Plymouth, the first 2 houses that we lived in were in really, really areas that some people wouldn't live in. So my neighbours in my first house and my second house were drug dealers and prostitutes, student lads. And my second house, I came home one day with my little girl in my hand. My son had already, so he was walking home, he's a little bit older. My little girl was in my hand, and as I've got to my street, it's just shut off. And there's armed police, and there's guys everywhere, male or female, I don't know, in the full, complete hazmat suits, the white outfits, which tells you somebody's dead or something's massive going on. And as it was probably one of the biggest drugs busts they'd ever seen or ever heard of. I think the guy's still in prison now, and he was pimping children. And he was not only pimping the children, but he was pimping the kids to drug run for him. So it was just horrible. So, you know, this is where we live. So when I say we bought an affordable house, it came at a cost. That we lived in neighbourhoods that, you know, nobody else would ever live in. And it took me, I think, 7 pay rises before we got off that street. 7 pay rises before we got off that street. So, you know, people think we all had it easy. But we only ever had, my income was average, Mike's income was below average. So between the 2 of us, we just about scraped below average income. And, you know, it wasn't easy. Yes, we had the accident of birth, being born in the 1960s, growing up when we grow up, living in the southwest, living in Plymouth, being able to afford a house in some of the less popular areas. Wonder why people didn't want to live there. Less popular areas. And, yeah, it wasn't easy. However, we do accept the fact that we could buy a house on relatively low wages. But like I said, even when we improved our incomes, you know, like I said about the elephant in the room, there was always the stuff of people who could be where we are now, who could be retired now, who could be debt-free now, who could have their house paid off, who could have taken their pension early, but they're not there. And let's talk a bit more about the elephant in the room. It's that elephant, isn't it? It's massive, it's there, everybody knows it's there, but nobody wants to talk about it. So there we were with our pretty average incomes. And we saw people around us living like they had 2 to 3 times the income. So they lived well, because they were still paying for it. They might even still be paying for it now. They ate out frequently. There is nothing wrong with that. They had takeaways, nothing wrong with that. It's their choice, it's their money. But these are things that we didn't do. So even when we had 2 full-time salaries, we didn't eat out. We weren't buying new stuff for the house. We weren't buying new clothes. I used to go around the charity shops all the time and get really lovely work clothes. And people would comment and say, you look nice, your scarf is nice, your top is nice, whatever. And, you know, charity shops, car boot sales. They used to comment, say, well, your house is lovely. Yeah, charity shops, car boot sales, Facebook Marketplace, out of the free ads, that kind of stuff. So we shopped secondhand, we free cycled, you know, for years and years and years. We didn't go out, we didn't go anywhere, we didn't buy anything. We paid down our debts and then we paid off the mortgage. We worked it out, actually. When we downsized to the smallest house that we could go from one house to another one, so shrink our mortgage, by overpaying our mortgage by £333 a month at the time, I think in the space of, I can't think what it was, I think 2013, but yeah, 5 years, we overpaid another 20,000 of the capital of the house. It really reduced it so we could pay back our mortgage quickly. So yeah, that elephant in the room, it's like everyone thinks, oh, you had it so easy, you know, people your age, you've got it so easy, you could buy a house. Yeah, street with drug dealers. First house, I've got to tell you a funny story about our first house. We had a very busy prostitute 4 doors down from us, but she only worked daytimes, bless her heart, and she only dealt with the old chaps. So I don't know what kind of prostitution was going on in there, but it's very specialised. It was nice and quiet because it was only the old chaps, and she used to help them back in the taxi afterwards, dear of her. And so there she was, running her little business 4 doors down in her little basement flat, bless her heart. So there you go. So yes, we did buy houses. It was so easy for us to buy a house, wasn't it? It's a funny thing to think, isn't it? Well, there's often a little backstory from that, isn't there? So, frugal myths and misunderstandings, and maybe we've given people the wrong impression, because I think some people think that we're wealthy in some kind of way because we do things that we save for, that we go without. I remember somebody in the comments saying, you're not poor, you're going on holiday to the south of France. Well, we've costed our holiday completely and it's €1,000, and we saved for it and saved about €85 a month over a year beforehand to go. And we are staying in a little house in a little village near the Pyrenees, which is the south of France, for a fortnight. We're driving down and we'll use our own food budget to feed ourselves because we're staying in a rental property. So that won't cost us anymore. But I'm sure people think, oh, you'll be in Antibes with the film stars, drinking cocktails in some hotel. I don't know what they think they were going to be doing. So if we've given the wrong impression somewhere that we're kind of, the outcome of our frugality is we are wealthy in some way. And yes, we understand people looking in who are never going to own a home. And we understand that. And we think the world is because of it. I can't put the words in there because I can't put them out there. And we think the systems in place that have stopped everybody from doing that is, I can't say the words, can I? Because I will be biased, and I try not to be. So we understand. So if we've given people the wrong impression that we're wealthy in any way, or that our struggles are not real in any way, or that we're frugal for a laugh or fun or views or clicks, I hope I've not given you that impression. We, at the end of the day, have been very ordinary people with very ordinary salaries who've been very ordinarily frugal to get where we are, even though we accept that we are some of the lucky few people to have afforded houses with prostitutes and drug dealers in the first place. Hope that clears it up. If I've not been clear, leave us a question below. Yes, we're frugal because we have to be. Yes, we're frugal because we live on less than minimum wage. Yes, we're frugal because we're early retirees and we've chosen peace and a quiet life. And yes, we're frugal and we still take trips frugally. Because you know what? You're allowed to go on holiday even if you're poor, even if you've got a low income. You're allowed to. So there you go. We'll see you on the next video. If you've got any more questions, leave it below and I'll just leave you an answer. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.